Welcome to the High Vibe Life podcast, where we are obsessed with all things manifestation, neuroscience, personal growth, and quite simply, living a life beyond our wildest dreams. I'm Moira, author, speaker, podcaster, manifestation, and mindset master. Since getting sober 25 years ago, I've helped tens of thousands of women break through and achieve massive levels of wealth, joy, and freedom. Now it's your turn. Let's dig in. Welcome back to the High Vibe Life podcast with me, your host, Moira Casaba, and we are digging into a topic today that is not new to you, that you have heard probably time and time again, but it is a topic worth repeating, and that is the topic of action. Action and how incredibly important it is. And I know that there are so many people out there that are stuck in overthinking, that are stuck in overanalyzing. And I hope today that I can give you some tips and tools to kind of get you out of that overthinking and into action. So here's one of my favorite quotes. It's by John Ruskin, and it says this: "What we think or what we know or what we believe is in the end of little consequence. The only consequence is what we do." Listen, the world doesn't pay people for what they know. It doesn't pay people for their knowledge or their ability even. There are so many people out there that know so much, that could help so many people. There is so much gifting in all of us that we could use, but the world rewards the ones that take that and turn it into action. So I want to take you back, and this was really kind of a social experiment of my own that I did maybe 10 or 12 years ago. So it's when I started mentoring and working with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of women. And they all wanted to build businesses. And I was looking as much as I possibly could. Like, it was like a science experiment. I was like, what is the recipe? Like, what are the personality traits? Who makes, and I used to be asked this question a lot, like, what attributes, what qualities make people successful, right? Why are these 10 people over here succeeding at wild levels, and these 50 people over here are just kind of mediocre in their success? And then here's another pool of people that aren't succeeding at all. And I was like, I'm going to figure this out, because I have all of these amazing people that I know very intimately, that I can really dive deep into their character traits, their abilities, what sets them apart, what makes them so unique as to why this class over here would be so successful. And you guys, I did not find what I thought I would find. I thought in that business model, well, it's going to take this type of background, or it's going to take this type of skill set, or it's going to take this type of knowledge, and this type of maybe characteristic. Maybe it's hardworking, right? Which hardworking goes hand in hand with action usually. But it wasn't anything. It was not any one thing, because here's what I found. What I thought would make the successful people successful, the personality that was big and energetic, and, they knew how to sell, or they had a sales background, or they had, influence over a group of people, and so they had an audience. Like, all of these people, all of these things, I was like, well, this is going to be really simple, because an audience matters, influence matters, personality matters, energy matters, and all of those things matter. But you guys, I mentored a lot of women. I'm talking hundreds with all of those things, with the influence, with the giant social media following, with the big personalities. I mentored people that knew exactly how to sell. And some of them, a lot of them, didn't succeed at all. And then I had this group over here that was succeeding beyond anyone's expectations, theirs and mine. And I thought, why in the world? Why in the world? I used to say it was almost also like the land of misfit toys over here, the ones that were succeeding. I looked at them and I was like, they have nothing in common. They have absolutely nothing in common, and nothing that I would think would make them stand out as successful people that would go on to have success. Well, the land of misfit toys who I love dearly with all of my heart, and they were dear friends over time, they were taking action, my friends. That was the great separator. They simply took action. Every day, consistently got into simple, trackable action. And so we have to understand, because I think so often where we get stuck in the overthinking and in the overanalyzing is, I don't have the right personality. I don't have the right skill set. I don't have the right look. I don't know how to use social media. I'm bad at technology. We get caught up in all these things that keep us stuck, when if we understood, none of that matters. None of that matters. Success favors action. If we could link those two things up, it would be so much easier to simply step into the action. So I remember this story also. I want to share one more story, but before I share, like 3 concrete things you can do to shift this in your life and hopefully take some pressure off of, I think a lot of times when people hear action, they think massive, insane, over the top, go, burnout action. And that's not the action I'm talking about. But I remember my mom used to share this story, and you may have heard it or read it in a book somewhere, but it's the story of a hurricane comes and the flooding comes into the town. And there's a man that kind of, makes his way up to his roof. And the reason I'm telling you this story is because sometimes people are stuck in overthinking and overcomplicating and over planning and over strategizing. But here's another place people get stuck. They think God's going to do it all, or the law of attraction is going to magically bring it into their life, and they're just going to hand it over and let the powers that be make it happen, right? And so this story illustrates that point. And I don't know why my mom told me this story when I was young, but she told it many times. She would talk about the man on the roof, that in the flood, as the waters rose, somebody came to him and said, here, grab this rope, I can help you, or whatever it is. Grab this raft, I'll pull you to safety. And he says, no, I've prayed. God has a plan. God will save me. And the next thing, an hour later, as the waters continue to rise, somebody comes by in a boat and says, get in. I can save you. You're going to die out here. Hop into the boat. I'll bring you to safety. And he says, no, I prayed to God. God will save me. And so the boat leaves. And then the next thing that happens is a helicopter flies over, drops the ladder, and says, you're going to die. Grab the ladder, climb to safety. We will save you. And the man says, no. I've prayed to God. My God will save me. Well, the next thing we know, the man arrives at the gates of heaven. And God says, what in the world? Why didn't you take he says to God, why didn't you save me? And God says, I sent you a man with a raft, I sent you a boat, and I sent you a helicopter. What else did you need me to do to save you? And so the point that I'm illustrating is we can't sit back and let the magical powers that be and think that we're going to just have the paycheck show up in the bank, right? Or we're going to have the job offer, come knock on our front door. We have to take the action. I was actually reading something the other day, a little bit kind of about this. It reminded me of the topic of action. And it was just talking about 2 people that were like, okay, think about this, like fresh out of college, we've got to go get jobs. And the one kid is like, okay, I'm just going to go out there and I'm going to start, banging on doors. I'm going to start talking to people. I'm walking into restaurants. I'm walking into agencies. I'm getting on the phone. I'm talking to people. And at the end of the week, he has a job because he has taken action and just talked to so many people. And he comes home to his girlfriend, who's fresh out of college looking for a job. And he says, wait, you didn't find a job yet? And she said, well, I'm taking a course on how to put my resume together, which is going to take me, 6 weeks. And then I'll be able to put my resume together, hopefully the right way. And then hopefully I can come up with a plan to put my resume out there or maybe meet with a headhunter. And it's like one of them already has a job. One of them hasn't even stepped off square one, right? Think about it. I want you to think about flip-flopping sometime the planning and the action. And guys, I teach planning. I love a plan. But sometimes you have to flip-flop action and planning. So for instance, let's take the guy that went door to door and found the job in a week. Somebody could have easily said to him, hey, I think you're hired, but you know what? I just need you to submit your resume. And he probably would have gone, oh crap, I don't have a resume. But he would have figured it out. He had already almost locked in the job. They just simply wanted his resume to have on file. How much easier is it at that point to go home, throw a resume together, figure it out, submit the resume, you got the job, right? That's what we need to do a lot of the times. I will tell you, so much of my success has been getting in the room, committing to the action, saying yes to something that I'm completely unprepared for, but my yes committed me to the action. My yes committed me to the preparation at warp speed, right? I didn't get stuck in perfection before launching. I decided to launch. And what do they say? Jump out of the airplane, build a parachute on your way down, right? We need more of that. I had so many notes and I completely went off on a tangent. So let me go back to this. So I do teach planning. Like I actually teach classes in planning out your week and planning all of that. And a framework that I teach is actually the dream work, which means so often we have to take the time to kind of I always say, step out of your life to work on your life, to then step into your life to execute. And so what happens is sometimes we take too much time in the dream work and the planning, right? So it might be a deep dive all day that you're like, I'm going to sit down and get clear on my vision and my mission and my goals and what reverse engineer that to decide and figure out what those actions are. And then the next day you step into your action. When I said earlier, don't be overwhelmed by massive action and feeling like you've got to launch yourself into burnout to succeed, the most successful people just take daily consistent action. So I'm going to give you this example, and I'm going to get back to the dream work and the daily work in a second. But I want to give you this example of one of those women that I talked about earlier that I worked with 10 years ago. So in our business at the time, we were supposed to reach out and contact 3 people a day. So think about it like a sales job, right? 3 contacts a day. Well, the majority of people were overthinking, how do I contact them? What do I say? What are they going to think? I don't know send me the words, overcomplicating. And so frozen. And so a whole month might go by and they've really reached out to like 3 people in a month versus 3 people a day. The land of misfit toys, right? The people that I thought, I don't know what they have that's making them successful, but they've got something and the thing was action. Think about one of those women who was getting out of her head and getting into action and making 3 contacts a day, right? That's about 100 contacts a month. Small, daily, consistent action doesn't take a lot of time at all. That is 1,200 contacts a year. At one point at the 5-year mark, she had been very successful. And people would be like, wow, how has she succeeded so much? Outside looking in, she doesn't seem like somebody that would be wildly successful in this business. Well, over the last 5 years, she has contacted over 6,000 people because she is simply consistent in the daily actions that matter, which in a sales position is connecting with people, right? So think about how simple that daily action is, but how necessary it is for success, how black and white. Let's take the person that's reaching out to 3 people a month. That's like 30 people a year. So over 5 years, that's 150 people versus 6,000. 150 people versus 6,000. You can see the trajectory of one versus the other. So let's go back. The daily work and the dream work. So yes, you want to step out of your life. Even in the morning, you want to step out. Let me go back. You want to step out of your life, get clear on the vision, get clear on the dream. I've got a million podcasts about that. And then the next day you want to get into action. For me, I even pull back and I go, okay, it's Sunday. I need to plan for the week, right? So I might take 30 minutes to plan my week and write things in the margin and, figure out even when I'm working out, when I'm meeting with this person, when I'm prepping for a speech, all of those things. I plan out the week so that I own my time and it does not own me. I do not wake up and respond to messages and respond to emails and respond to DMs. I know what I'm doing from 8 to 9, from 9 to 10, from 10 to 11, from 11 to 12. And it actually keeps me very calm and centered and not stressed out, right? So that's the planning portion. Even in the morning, I take a few minutes, maybe 5, to re-look at that day that I've planned out and to say, oh, has anything come up, right? I need to plan accordingly so that I can execute effectively. And then I get into action, 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 action. So I'm going to tell you one more story before I give you these 3 tips. I was thinking about this as I was prepping for this podcast, and I'll never forget this. And I'm going to say, pardon my language in advance, but I was teaching a mastermind out in Utah, and it was a half-day mastermind. So I had spoken about so many things, so many frameworks. I had taught. We'd done exercises together, one-on-one coaching in the room. And I want to say it was probably a 3-hour day. And I'll never forget at the end saying, what questions do you guys have? Obviously, we had done a lot of Q&A up to that point. But one woman raised her hand. I know exactly what she looks like in my mind still. And after I had taught so many things, she looked at me and said, here's what I know. And I was like, okay. She said, you just get shit done. And I started laughing. I was like, what? And she said, from everything you've shared, what I've realized is you just get shit done. And I was like, yeah, I do. All the frameworks I taught, everything I was doing, the success that was coming out the other end of my action was because of the action, right? You're just moving the needle forward more quickly compared to the rest of the world that's getting stuck in overthinking. Okay, so how do we do this? I want to give you these 3 concrete tips. So one of my favorite, and I always say you want to grab onto these slogans like brain tattoos, which that's a Robin Sharma thing. You brain tattoo this because you can pull them out like little tools that you're like, oh, I can do this. And one of those was given to me by Tony Robbins. Take action in the moment of inspiration. And he was saying, to go a little step further, was take action in the moment of inspiration that commits you to the goal. Meaning this, if you're sitting in, if you're listening to a podcast, let's use this for example. You're listening to this podcast right now and you're thinking, this all sounds amazing. I'm going to keep thinking about this. And I'm going to do this and I'm going to plan on this. And you're just in your head, right? Who's going to hold your feet to the fire when you're saying, this is what I'm going to do? So take action in the moment of inspiration is you listening to the podcast, getting inspired to shift, to commit to something, but then we never stay committed to it. So the action is pick up the phone, make the appointment, book the therapist, hire the coach, do it in the moment of inspiration. I have done that thousands of times in my life. So think about this. I go to lots of seminars. I love a seminar. I love like a 3-day full immersion event. I will walk out of a 3-day immersion event and I'm not exaggerating, 20 wheels will be in motion, right? I've set the meeting. I've made the decision. I've paid for the training. I've committed to this. I've launched the strategy plan. I've done all this. So I'm not leaving a 3-day seminar with a book full of notes that I'm hoping I'm still inspired by when I get home and life gets crazy and I've got children and life in full flow. And then you don't execute on any of it, or you execute on 1 or 2 things. Execute in the moment of inspiration. Take action in the moment of inspiration that commits you to the end result. So here's another example of this that I've used many times in my life, and I have shared this before. It's not the first time. So for instance, you could get in an argument with your spouse, and I hate to say I'm betting that a lot of people can relate to this, and you think, we really need to go to therapy. Like, we really need to go to counseling, and I know that is going to shift things, right? Like, you're inspired to take action to do the work. That's the thing. You're inspired in that moment to put in the effort, to put in the work, to change your life. And then what happens the next day? Well, you're not as angry, you're not as frustrated. Things have kind of gotten back to normal. So you sweep it under the rug and you just get back to your regular old marriage that's not thriving until the next time when you get in a fight, you get in an argument, you get to your wit's end and you think again, we need to go to counseling. I think this would change everything. I'm willing to put in the work, but I can't do this anymore. And then it happens again. You don't do the counseling. You don't take the action. You don't put in the work. So for me, I have learned in my marriage many times while I'm literally in an argument with my husband where an issue has arose where I'm like, a third party would really help. Like an outside opinion would really shift this. And it can be as simple for me as like, wow, this is an issue that keeps resurfacing for us. That means we're not really working through it. Like we alone aren't getting to the other side of this and getting to a healthy space and place. We really need to like get in our therapist's office and just do some work around this. So we have been in an argument and I will just calmly pull out my phone in the moment of inspiration, in the moment where I'm thinking about it, and I will text our therapist, hey, can we get an appointment? There's been times where she's messaged me back 2 days later and I'm like, actually, we're good. Like, we're good. And we have worked it out. But I've committed myself to the action in the moment, right? And almost 9 times out of 10, when she does message me back, I'm like, oh, I don't feel like going to therapy anymore. But she messaged me back. I know that if I took action in that moment, it's important. I need to honor that. And we keep the appointment and our marriage gets better, right? You're committed to the action. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2, and this is where I want to take the pressure off. Commit to less. Commit to less. So I call it the power of 3. I love a to-do list. I love time management. I love to teach my 4-step time hack process where you put all the dozens and dozens and dozens of things down on a piece of paper that you need to do. I love all that. I love seeing on a piece of paper I always say dump it, right? Dump it out of your mind and onto a piece of paper to free up space in your mind. And so I have dozens of things on my to-do list. But the question I ask myself every morning is, what are the 3 most important things I need to do today? And if I do those 3 things, and I always try to do them first, I am winning at life, in business, with my children, in my marriage, because I am identifying the 3 most important things, right? I might think I have 25 things to do for work, but if I ask myself that question one morning and it's something for my daughter who might be struggling, and it's like, you know what? I've got all this stuff to do, but in that pause, the most important thing in that day is to make sure I stop and spend quality time with her and have a conversation so that she feels seen, she feels heard, she feels supported. How do you think I feel at the end of that day? When I've identified that, I put my head on the pillow and I go, I did the most important things today. And one of those 3 could probably very well be the one thing that's most important in my work, the one thing that's most important in my family, right? Some days all 3 things are work, but I identified the 3 most important, and that's what I go to bed feeling accomplished in, not the 25 or 30 or 40 things I think I need to do. Because you guys, your success, if you're looking at this from a financial or a business perspective, your success lies in probably doing 3 things well every single day, not 25 things well. All right, so that's tip number 2. Tip number 3, find an accountability partner. So I want to give you the option, and hopefully you'll do both and not just take the option. But for years, I had an accountability partner that was strictly a true accountability partner, where we would, and she was one of my good friends, so we would talk every day, and we would talk about life, and we would talk about business, and we talk about the kids. I didn't just say, oh yeah, I've got a best friend that is kind of my accountability partner. We had every Friday morning at 9:30 a call where outside of our regular relationship, we got on a call and it was, what's working for you in your business? What are you struggling with? What are you winning at? And what am I holding you accountable to? 4 questions. That's it. 4 questions. And then we would get on the next week and I would say, I'm holding you accountable to this from last week. Did you do it? Why did you do it? Why didn't you do it? Blah, 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 blah. Strictly accountability. Sometimes those calls were 15 or 20 minutes. No chit chat, no kids, no fluff. Accountability partner, right? That is huge. And here's another tip. You kind of want to find an accountability partner that scares you a little. That isn't going to let you slide. That isn't going to let you get away with everything. And then here's the other version of somebody that I really want you to have in your life. I've done a podcast about this in the past. A good friend of mine, Justin, I can't remember all of the people he says. He names the people you need in your life, and he's got like 4 or 5 of them. But one he refers to as the bully, believe it or not. And he says we all need a bully in our life. And believe it or not, my best friend and business partner is, the second he said it, I was like, oh, that's Erin, totally. She's the friend that I will actually call and say, I need your help, or I need you to hold me to something. And she's like, what is it? Because she is so ready to push me. She's so ready to hold my feet to the fire. She's never going to let me slide. She's never going to let me get stuck in overthinking. She will hold my feet to the fire like nobody else. And so you want to identify those people in your life too, that you can say, I'm going to pick up the phone even though I'm terrified, but I keep letting myself down. I keep letting this thing slide, and it's so important to me. So I need to call in the reinforcements. I need to call in people in my life that are going to hold me accountable to the execution, to the action, right? So whether that's a friend that you can call in a moment or a weekly accountability partner, both is better. Both is way better. You got to have those people in your life. So to recap, tip number 1, take action in the moment of inspiration, right? Tip number 2, commit to less, the power of 3. Ask yourself in the morning, what are the 3 most important things I need to do today? And then tip number 3, get yourself an accountability partner or a friend that's a little bit of a bully. So I hope that helps you guys. I hope it gets you out of the overthinking, into action, and on your way to success. Share this with your team if you have one. Share it with a friend that needs to hear it. Encourage your friends that action is the way. Action is the path to success. That's what the world pays us for. Thanks for tuning in, you guys. We will see you next week.